Episode 22, a beauty who had run away from home. Using his optimal logic, Keith found that 20 dexterity was still not enough to activate wind walking. To avoid bullets at a close distance, he needed at least 40 dexterity. If he encountered a submachine gun, he needed at least 60 dexterity. Besides dexterity, he also needed a strong reaction time and powerful eyesight. If he wanted to protect himself, he still had a long way to go. He walked to White Pine Gardens and showed his key at the entrance to the building. Only then did the security guard let him in. The property management certainly wasn't slack here. Keith found the right apartment and let himself in. The renovation wasn't bad, and there was a spacious living room, kitchen, and bathroom. There was also a master bedroom with an ensuite and 2 guest rooms. He nodded in satisfaction and pushed open the door to the main bedroom, but the scene that greeted him gave him a shock. Lying on the large bed was a body. Keith's first reaction was that he'd encountered a murderer. However, the soft snoring made him heave a sigh of relief. Then he frowned slightly. Why was there a woman sleeping in the room? He thought perhaps he'd entered the wrong apartment, and he went to take a look at the door number. It was indeed the house that he'd rented. Keith hesitated for a moment, then decided to wake the woman up and ask her about it. Daria Asan, the young woman asleep in Keith's new home, was awoken by a light pat on the shoulder. She shot up like a frightened rabbit, only to see a strange but handsome young man looking at her. She instinctively pulled the blankets close around herself, then opened her mouth as if about to shout, but Keith's movements were too fast. His hand covered her mouth, and she couldn't make a sound. Daria was so frightened that tears immediately sprang into her eyes. Keith was angry and amused at the same time, and he said, "I'm the new tenant. I'll let you go, but don't yell, okay?" Hearing this, Daria let out a heavy sigh of relief and nodded her head. Keith smiled and said, "So do you want to tell me why you're trespassing in private property?" Daria replied, "I ran away from home and had nowhere to go." She was very beautiful, and her pitiful expression would melt even the hardest heart. Keith was surprised, and he said with some amusement, "You ran away from home? Isn't that a bit of a cliche?" "It's true," Daria exclaimed, and she began to explain the story. It turned out that her parents had emigrated, but Daria didn't want to stay in their new home. She'd left them a note and secretly returned to the USA. The apartment originally belonged to her family, but because they wanted to emigrate, they sold it to the agency at a low price. Daria hadn't brought much money back with her, and she'd soon become destitute. But she still had the keys to this apartment, so she'd been staying there in secret since returning. The security guards knew her well, and they let her in without question. She'd only been back about a week, and the realtors hadn't discovered her yet. Keith frowned slightly. He used optimal logic to assess her story and found that there was no flaw in her words. He glanced at the ID and passport on the nightstand and decided he could believe her. But even if this girl was penniless and beautiful, why should he let her live in the apartment he was renting? Daria seemed to have seen through Keith's thoughts and said with some grievance, "Oh, when I start making money, I promise I'll pay rent." "Make money?" Keith asked curiously. "You're asleep in the middle of the day. How are you planning to make money?" Daria pointed at the computer proudly and said, "I'm a streamer. I'm one of the top players. in League of Legends. You want me to teach you some tricks? What? Keith smiled. He had recently acquired the Master of the Game skill. He didn't need any help in that area, but this girl was so pitiful. If he threw her out, he would feel so unreasonable. But he didn't really want to share his living space with her. After all, he was a man with secrets. Just as he was puzzling over this dilemma, the system's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Energy crystal detected. What? Keith thought in surprise. The system needs energy when upgrading, and the crystal can provide energy. For every unit of energy crystal you acquire, you can randomly obtain a maximum level skill. Keith was delighted by this news and asked the system, "Well, where's the energy crystal?" The system replied, "It's hanging on Daria's neck." Keith saw an emerald pendant hanging around Daria's neck, just as described. It must be the energy crystal. Driven by the temptation of a new skill, Keith smiled and said, "Well, I suppose I could take you in, but there are conditions." Daria saw Keith staring straight at her chest. She hurriedly covered herself with her hands and yelped, "Don't even think about it." Keith smiled and said, "Think about what? I just want the emerald pendant around your neck." "Emerald pendant?" Daria heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, she looked at the necklace and asked curiously, "I bought this a while ago. It was only a few $100s. What do you want this for?" Keith said with a faint smile, "You don't need to worry about that. Give me the pendant. Otherwise, you can leave." "All right." Daria smiled and handed the necklace to Keith. "But leave me alone now. I'm going back to sleep." Keith took the pendant with satisfaction and heard the system say, "You've collected an energy crystal and therefore obtained a random skill. The system will draw it for you now. Please wait a moment." After a pause, it went on. "You've obtained the skill instrument proficiency. You can use any musical instrument to play music as you wish." "You want me to work in the music industry?" Although Keith had really wanted a skill to enhance his combat power, this skill was still okay. After all, having any new skill was a good thing. He came back to the present situation and realized that Daria had already fallen asleep again. He had originally wanted her to give him the master bedroom, but seeing how tired she was, he smiled, unbothered by the matter. He could stay in the guest room, for now. "You fulfilled Daria's wish. Wish value +1. Current progress 3 of 10.